You can't conceive of what I'm capable of!
Hey guys, Kiwi here. In this video, I'll be breaking down discussing the new Capable trailer for Season 5 of Better Call Saul. With that being said, warning of spoilers, and let's jump right into this. So this trailer probably gives me the most hype out of all of them when it comes to just the way it's presented and edited. I really feel like we're going to see Jimmy go off hinges this season as he evolves into Saul and beyond. The trailer starts out with Jimmy frantically driving out into the desert in his car, and I can't wait to see what will get him to this point. In another clip, we can see him standing outside of his car, straightening his blazer, which I assume is him hyping himself up like he used to do in the courthouse bathroom, along with him looking down at what appears to be into a well. There's another clip of him also standing beside his car, drinking some water or something. Now, I'm not sure if the trailer's trying to trick us or what, but are these clips out of order? Did Saul arrive there without his blazer on, get out, put it on while he's in the desert waiting for whatever he's waiting for? Or is it all backwards with him starting out with his blazer on and then he takes it off as he's frantically driving back into town? Maybe he goes out there to wait for someone in the desert, but then he realizes something's gone horribly wrong and so he rushes back into town. Maybe he's worried about Kim, and speaking of her, we can see him kissing her outside of the courthouse, so their relationship is very much public, and although I want, to be happy for them, we all know something is going to go horribly wrong between them by the end of the season, or at least the end of the show, causing some sort of separation as Kim is not existent during Breaking Bad. Will Jimmy embarrass Kim as he now acts more Saul-like, not only around her, but also publicly as well? Saul Goodman is essentially an outlet for Jimmy to act like Slippin' Jimmy, but for a job as a lawyer.
In the end, you're going to hurt everyone around you. You can't help it, so stop apologizing and accept it. Embrace it. Frankly, I'd have more respect for you if you did.
Something inside Jimmy broke the day Chuck died, and I don't think that it could ever be fixed. Chuck purposely said what he did just to hurt Jimmy for the rest of his life. He wanted that to be the finite way that Jimmy thought. So the thing is, Chuck just purposely said all of those things to hurt Jimmy's feelings, and it worked. Jimmy does believe everything that he said, and Jimmy never told anyone about it, and now that Chuck is dead, he pretty much took that to his grave, and Jimmy's just holding that on his shoulders all by himself. And as far as Kim being surprised by the way Saul acts goes, well, Jimmy's used to acting like Saul, but he doesn't realize that she isn't. Just because he's gotten everything figured out in his head doesn't mean that she should just telepathically know as well. He's been hiding this side of his life from her for the past 4 seasons, but now the floodgates are open and she's about to see what's been truly knocking at her doorstep all this time. Now, in the past, Chuck has tried warning Kim about how Jimmy would just always be that kid to steal a cookie out of the cookie jar, and Jimmy knows that Kim is aware of his conning side of things as them, becoming Victor with a K or whatever, and going and conning people for shots, and going and conning that huge con that they did at the end of the last season where they switched the blueprints for the paperwork. But does Kim truly know of his Slippin' Jimmy ways? Does she really know about his past? Has he sat down and ever told her the entire truth? I don't think that she truly knows, what he's capable of, and that's the whole point of this trailer. I don't know if he's directly talking to Kim at this moment. I don't know if he's talking to Howard or Petty for a Prior guy or just some random client or person, but Kim seems to like that side of him on occasion, doing cons with him and whatnot. It excites her, it seems that it gets her really interested in him, but he does get too carried away, and she is more realistic and rational out of the two of them. Maybe she could handle him and they could even each other out if that was all there was to it, but Jimmy is just full sending himself into this Saul Goodman career to distract himself from things that he has compartmentalized and bottled up, along with just being able to use it as an outlet for what he truly loves, and that's going to be too much for Kim to handle, and she's starting to see that already. Now, speaking of which, we can see a handful of moments in the trailers that seem to give the appearance of Kim and Jimmy being happy together, having loving, embracing moments as as they kiss each other and celebrate what they're happy about, but I feel like this is going to be short-lived and that they're going to drift further apart than we even saw them do so during the month-long time lapse of them in season 4. Jimmy seems to be completely clueless when it comes to everyone's bizarre reactions to the way he's been reacting post-Chuck death. Jimmy should be going through the 5 stages of grief, but he hasn't gone through any. Jimmy was never in denial over Chuck's death, he never got angry about it really, he never tried to bargain to undo it or to make up for it, and he was never shown to be depressed about it. He skipped the whole thing and went straight from shocked to acceptance, and he's acting like he's over it already as if he just stubbed his toe and nothing more. I believe that Jimmy is so broken and hurt by the outcome of his final conversation with Chuck during the season 3 finale, realizing that he can never do anything about it now that he's dead after season 4, and that he went from caring too much about what his brother would have thought to not at all. He went from only seeking his brother's approval to doing the complete opposite, whatever he thinks he'll be successful at, not worried about what's ethical, what's right or wrong, what people will think of him, or what Chuck would have wanted him to do. Notice all the times that Jimmy has been seen in season 5 trailers either putting on Marco's pinky ring or rubbing it with his other fingers. This is symbolic of the path that Jimmy has decided to take. This is a way for him to psych himself up as Slippin' Jimmy returning once again as Saul Goodman. Coming full circle, we know that the name Saul Goodman was created during a Slippin' Jimmy con.
Hey, bro, I never did catch your name.
Saul.
Saul?
It's all good, man. Get it?
I do. All right, Saul.
Let me take you back to the end of season 1. Jimmy and Mike stole the money from the Kettlemans, Jimmy returned the portion that he was bribed with, and then they returned the money to where it rightfully should have gone to. Jimmy looks at Mike and asks him why they did it, and once Mike gives his straight answer, Jimmy tells him that he'll never do it again. And as he's saying this, guess what he's doing? Rubbing Marco's ring. Every time that I see Jimmy, or rather Saul now, rub Marco's ring, I feel like he's not only thinking back to Marco and the Slippin' Jimmy days, he's also thinking back to all that money that he had sitting in front of him from the Kettlemans, along with this exact moment we're talking about when he drove away from Mike, telling him that he'd never make the same mistake again. That's right, he thought returning that money was a mistake. He regrets giving that money back, and he says he's not going to make that mistake again, so we'll see what happens to him in season 5 with this mentality. All of this is so important to discuss because season 5 isn't just about, yay, we have Saul Goodman now. It's actually about the death of Jimmy McGill, along with a darker, more sinister version of himself taking over.
What?
Hey, hey, bro, be nice, all right? This guy right here is trying to help you.
There's so much to both sides of the argument as far as Chuck versus Jimmy goes, along with taking a step back and trying to look at it from a third point of view, an outside perspective without being biased. Now, usually I lean towards the Jimmy side of things, even if I do know that he's doing something wrong. He's doing it for the right reasons, and he wouldn't be doing it at all if he wasn't pushed to do so. Yes, he changed the numbers, but he wouldn't have done so if Chuck wouldn't have screwed over Kim with Mesa Verde just to get through to Jimmy and spite him for it. On the other side, yeah, I understand Chuck getting pissed off about certain things, such as Jimmy constantly taking shortcuts and getting away with things that he shouldn't. But maybe if Chuck wasn't so spiteful and they could have worked things out, I don't know, I rarely discuss this nowadays because I've just talked about it so much in the past back during season 3, and I've gone so in depth on both sides that I just get overwhelmed even thinking about it. Unless I went through the entire show again, purposely taking notes and jotting down a timeline with all of my thoughts and opinions, it's so hard to know where to even begin the discussion that is Chuck versus Jimmy. Which one is more to blame? Is Jimmy to blame for Chuck never recovering? Is Chuck to blame for Jimmy returning to the Slippin' Jimmy ways and turning into Saul? And also, some people say that Chuck being so spiteful and hateful towards Jimmy and jealous that he's so likable and able to take take shortcuts and get away with them. It's a leading theory that from the moment that Jimmy became a lawyer, it actually just made Chuck's life go completely downhill. Chuck just obsessing over the fact that he didn't want Jimmy to become a lawyer, it ruined his marriage, it caused him to get this sort of placebo illness towards electricity, and it was actually his downfall in the end. Chuck probably could have, bounced back and maybe gotten Jimmy disbarred and lived happily ever after in his eyes, but just the chicanery of what Jimmy was doing just really got to Chuck, and he kind of caused his own demise, setting himself up for failure, having that public outburst instead of keeping his cool, just due to frustration over how much he actually hated his brother. And that's what I mean by he lied during that final conversation with Jimmy. If he never cared that much about Jimmy, he wouldn't have cared to get so upset over everything. He wouldn't have cared to get so jealous. He wouldn't have cared enough to bring Jimmy to court and also to have a public freakout in the middle of it. So what's truly to blame for Chuck's illness or him not bouncing back? What's truly to blame for Saul Goodman being created? Now, we can't just always blame Chuck, because there's a possibility that Saul would have turned out this way regardless of what could have happened between him and Chuck.
Why have regrets at all? What's the point?
What do you mean?
Well, look at you. You're in so much pain. Why are you putting yourself through all this?
Because I wanted to tell you
That you have regrets. And I'm telling you, don't bother. What's the point?
Did Chuck cause Jimmy to turn into Saul, or would he have just reverted back to his slippin' Jimmy ways regardless eventually? Can people change, or do they never change? That's just really just a philosophical, existential crisis type of question, but if Chuck would have just supported him, accepted him for his shortcuts, and given him a job, would Jimmy still be working alongside Chuck, sometimes taking shortcuts, but mostly on the straight and narrow? Jimmy, Chuck, Howard, and Kim all working together happily ever after at HHM, all because Chuck was able to accept Jimmy. Or would Jimmy have eventually found a way to ruin everything for himself regardless, eventually getting fired from HHM, possibly dragging HHM down with him, and then one way or another turning himself into a crooked lawyer regardless?
You're just gonna keep hurting people?
that's not true.
Jimmy, this is what you do. You hurt people over and over and over, and then there's this show of remorse.
It's not a show.
I know you don't think it's a show. I don't doubt your emotions are real. If you're not going to change your behavior, and you won't,
I can
why not
change.
just skip the whole exercise?
Jimmy had a perfect lawyer opportunity at Davis and Maine back in season 2, and he was bored of it, so he purposely got himself fired. Some can say that that's what would have happened if he would have got accepted into HHM in the first place. He had a great opportunity at Davis and Maine that he just shat on because he wanted something more challenging and in the line of his skill set. He was just bored having a fancy desk in a successful office, and he just threw it away. I think that the rush of talking down Tuco in the desert from murdering those 2 skater dudes to 2 broken legs must have unleashed something inside of Jimmy, so in a way he probably loved it when Walt and Jesse brought him out to the desert. But that, along with just everything else that's been happening in Better Call Saul, has been just almost making him more and more addicted to just the criminal side of things, the criminal world of being in trouble, having to talk himself out of trouble, because he seems to feed off of a similar energy that Walt does from Breaking Bad, where Jimmy puts himself into danger and then cleverly gets himself out of it, usually. But the thing is, now that he's an attorney, his law license is back, he has the girl of his dreams, there's no reason to play the dangerous game anymore. Realistically, he has everything that he's risked to get, and now that he has it, he should just do whatever Kim probably thinks is best, stick to the straight and narrow, but we all know that that's not going to happen. He's going to unnecessarily work with criminals, get mixed up in a ton of BS, such as getting involved with Nacho again, the Salamancas, Gus, Mike, who knows what else, all because he likes the rush of a good con. Maybe he does have a point of wanting to take shortcuts to make actual bank, as he'll definitely make way more money as Saul Goodman in a year working for people like Walt and Gus than you ever would as an honest lawyer named James McGill, even though lawyers do make bank as well, but he obviously enjoys this sort of danger aspect of it as well. He enjoys making a bunch of bank too, but he purposely puts himself in harm's way when he doesn't need to, and he definitely overdoes it at least half of the time.
Why this?
This is a fresh start. This is how I move forward. And I like it.
Jimmy, you are an attorney. There's no amount of money that is worth this.
In the trailer, we can see Kim asking him over and over again, Jimmy, you have your license, you're an attorney, no amount of money is worth losing this. Why would you do this? Do you even remember everything that we had to do to get to this point? Why would you choose to risk all of this? And all he has to say with just a completely clueless deer in headlights expression, because I like it, because I'm good at it. He just doesn't understand why she's worried. He doesn't understand that this isn't the Jimmy McGill that she originally fell in love with, and that this is kind of making her uncomfortable and it's kind of scaring her. He doesn't understand why this jars her for the same reason why it jarred her that he didn't react to Chuck's death at all. He just compartmentalized it and moved on, and that's what season 4 was about. Maybe if Jimmy was a little bit more self-aware, this wouldn't be so painful, as it's obvious to everyone except him. If he could just sit down and tell her everything about what's happened between him and Chuck, how he feels about it, what happened right before Chuck's death, how it just sucks how it had to end off that way, along with how he enjoys being Saul and everything that happened to slip in Jimmy and how he wants to continue doing that, maybe Kim could learn to accept him and they can work it out and she can kind of keep him level and make sure he doesn't go off the deep end, but that's just not gonna happen. We need conflict in a TV show, and we're just realistically never gonna have all the characters sit down in a round table and just talk about their feelings and work everything out and compromise, because not only is that unrealistic, that's just not entertaining. TV shows need conflict, and also just naturally, I don't think that Jimmy is the type of person to do that. I don't think he's the type of person to sit down and discuss those type of things. He usually just compartmentalizes it and moves on, and it would be so hard for him to sit down and discuss these things when he doesn't even realize that he's doing it himself. Like, yeah, he's subconsciously doing it, but he's not really that self-aware. He would almost need a counselor to sit down and tell him all of this first before he could even talk to Kim about it. Holy, has this video gone off the rails. Meant to just be a simple trailer breakdown. I was also going to do some behind the scenes trailer breakdowns as well, but I'm saving that for a future video now because there's just so much to discuss involving Jimmy turning into Saul, how Chuck played a part of it, and how Kim is going to deal with it. Oh, and finally, yes, there are a few clips in the trailer that I have not discussed in this video, but either I've discussed them previously, such as Mike bringing out Werner's men to the desert, check that on my last video if you haven't, or it's something that I'm actually saving for my next video, where I fully break down the whole Nacho versus Lalo versus Gus situation going on into season 5 of the show. I'm planning on doing that first, and then a video on Gene, along with a few other discussion topics such as Howard and Jimmy working together again, and then a few other promo trailers and teasers that have been recently released, and who knows if something else gets released in the middle of all of this, kind of just further stunting my plans, but we'll get around to it all. I have a lot that I want to cover here before season 5 drops, and then once season 5 drops, we're really going to be busy. But yeah, I'll have to check out the timeline just to fully see how much time passed in season 4 and how far away we are from overlapping with Breaking Bad, and let me know what you guys think about, did Chuck help to create Saul Goodman? Is he entirely at fault for it? Would Jimmy have turned into Saul anyways? And how is Kim going to put up with this? I'd appreciate a like on the video if you've enjoyed anything I've said today, as I'm always thankful with you guys helping me appease the YouTube algorithm. Thank you so much for all of the support on all of the Better Call Saul content that I'm currently doing. I'm not sure how many of you are returning viewers, or maybe this is your first time seeing a video from me, but subscribe and hit that bell notification for more content on Better Call Saul in the near future, because it's crazy. I have around 7,000 subscribers, and my videos get like 10 to 40,000 views, so just think about how many of you guys just aren't subscribed to me. Thank you, YouTube, for recommending my content, but thank you guys all so much for watching, and until next time, I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.